Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to ChasingCinema.com's official YouTube channel. I'm your host, Jacob Toronto, and for all my rebels out there, all my Las Vegas locals, I'm not saying, but I'm just saying, full page in the UNLV Rebel Yell. Make sure to pick it up. If you aren't local, you can always read my review at unlvrebelyell.com. Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm going to be reviewing the new film, Eye in the Sky. Technically, it's not that new. For a lot of people around the country, they might have seen this film already because it didn't have a wide release. It actually just opened in Vegas today, which is March 31st or April 1st, depending on when you're watching this. But it's been talked about, and the film has a relatively good score, but I hadn't heard much about it. I did know Aaron Paul from Breaking Bad was in the film. I knew Helen Mirren was in the film, as well as Alan Rickman in one of, if not his last performances. Let me quickly read you the plot summary for Eye in the Sky via imdb.com. Colonel Catherine Powell, a military officer in command of an operation to capture terrorists in Kenya, sees her mission escalate when a girl enters a kill zone, triggering an international dispute over the implications of modern warfare. The film was directed by Gavin Hood. For those of you that don't really remember Mr. Hood, Gavin Hood. He was the one that directed X-Men Wolverine Origins and Ender's Game. Now, Ender's Game was a little bit less disliked than X-Men Wolverine Origins, but nonetheless, two films that weren't super praised by critics. Now, going into this movie, I wasn't really sure what to expect. I actually didn't know the plot of the movie until I went in today. I didn't watch any trailers or anything, and I must say, I really, really enjoyed Eye in the Sky. One thing that this movie has down-packed are performances. Helen Mirren is great as this cold, very driven woman with a mission. And I know I say cold, and some of you might hear this because it is a political movie. It is about the military. It is about war. And we all going to have different opinions about certain things, right? And I think that's what makes this movie so good, is that it kind of brings us to a moral compass, right? It makes us argue and debate if this is worth this, if this is how we need to get things done, opposing to this. And it's a movie that will have you talking. Well after the movie. If you see it with a group of friends, I'm sure you and your friends are going to debate and argue and talk about their decisions and who makes what decision and how you feel about this. And I think that's what really makes Eye in the Sky great, is it a movie that wants to get you talking. It's a movie that wants to get you thinking. It's a very compelling movie, but it also is a very effective thriller. This year with 10 Cloverfield Lane and now Eye in the Sky, these are two excellent edge-of-your-seat thrillers. I found myself getting up constantly, just kind of waiting, because this whole movie has this ticking time bomb, but without the red counting down numbers. Roger Ebert always talked about the countdown clock. And in this movie, we don't have a clock that says 5, 4. We don't need that because the characters are so good at communicating the necessity of choices and decisions in a certain amount of time. And you feel that same pressure of all of the things that are happening in the time frame and the consequences. It's really, really good at pushing you and making you feel anxious and making you feel like every moment of the film is a detrimental minute. So I expected this movie to be a little bit bigger on a scale sense, but it's not. It actually probably takes place in about 6 locations, multiple military offices and a government office. And the whole thing with this movie is it has to do with drones as well. You hear about Aaron Paul, who's this pilot, and they're getting ready to go on a mission and fly, and then you find out they're actually flying a drone. And then there's a few more technological advances that they have, which we may or may not have. I don't know. But cool things. I wasn't too crazy about the techs. I'll just say the hummingbird and the beetle. If you've seen the trailer, you've seen the beetle, what I'm talking about. It's this flying kind of camera, maybe a drone in its own sense. I don't know what necessarily classifies as a drone opposed to a flying robot. I don't know. But those were cool, but obviously the big drone was pretty fascinating. And just this idea of how this might disconnect us from certain situations, right? Like how sitting all the way in Las Vegas might disconnect my decisions that happen in Kenya. I'm not saying that's what happens in the movie, but it makes you contemplate that. And Alan Rickman, who is really, really good in this movie, and I think everyone's really good. Aaron Paul, I think this is Aaron Paul's best performances since leaving Breaking Bad. If you're a fan of that show, you know that Jesse Pinkman Aaron Paul has not been done justice in the movie industry. I mean, Need for Speed wasn't that great. Exodus wasn't that great. He was in a few films. I can't remember the ones off the top of my head that I'm forgetting. Oh, he was just in 999, which was okay. None have given him an opportunity to really show his emotion like this movie. I think he played this role perfectly. It's not a very hard role, but it's a role that people will relate to and understand and feel for him and remember him for. Helen Mirren, like I said earlier, depending on how you view the movie, you will see her as cold, but at the same time, people could argue that she's cold because she has to do what she has to do. And you can be both things technically, but I think that her performance is really powerful because I don't think she is as stone-faced as we believe her to. Alan Rickman is also someone that is debating things, but also knows that there's bigger things at hand. He was really excellent in the film, and he says this really, really great line. Don't ever tell a soldier that they don't know the cost of war. And I mean, that moment alone is just like, oof. It's a really emotional movie. It's a movie that will get you really tense, really anxious, really excited. It's about the military. It's about the war. It talks about so many things, and it's such a focused movie, right? It's not like these films that were in different locations or setting scenes. It all happens over one mission, over like this one particular thing that should happen over the course of about 2 hours, 3 hours. Well, I mean, in the movie, probably 4 or 5, but even then, it's a very condensed movie, and it works so effectively. Now, as I said from the IMDb plot, things escalate when a young girl enters the kill zone, triggering an international dispute. So the whole movie is pretty much if this thing needs to take place, which will possibly hurt this girl. And now, if you were a fan of Siskel and Ebert, you would know Gene Siskel hated, when people filmmakers put teenager or young girls or young people in peril. He feels like it's cheap, it's manipulative, and to a degree, he's right? Like he picks a young girl who we see hula hooping and playing and living very innocently. Not to say that she needed to be perceived any other way, but it is a way of manipulation. The question is it cheap to make us feel for this girl because it's just a child and we automatically have that predetermined emotion to feel bad for her? Or is it cheap because it's a child and we know we're always going to hook people? Yes, but maybe that helps tell that story because this is something that actually happens. I don't find it necessarily cheap here, but it is technically manipulative. I mean, it is something that we've already have preconceived in our emotions. And I'm not saying that's a super negative thing, though. To me, I think that it was necessary for this film. I do think it would have been interesting to see this movie play out if it was not a child, the one in a danger zone. But I don't think it would have the same effect on people. As soon as our theater got out, people were talking and debating. And I mean, it's just a really, really effective movie. Now, you might not have, like I said, you might not have seen a trailer for it. You might not have heard about it. But I highly recommend doing so and going yourself and see this movie because it is a great nail-biting thriller. It's a movie that's smart. It's polarizing. It'll have you thinking. It'll have you debating. It'll frustrate. I mean, it is one of the most frustrating movies I've seen this year in a good way, right? It's not frustrating oh, damn, Batman vs. Superman should have been better. Not that frustrating. But frustrating is you feel for these characters and you want them to make decisions or you don't want them to make decisions. And you find yourself in this middle of this government conflict, or the military / government or political conflict, and all these different people don't want the responsibility of having to push this button, so to speak, and you find yourself drawing sides, and it's really effective in doing that. Easily one of my favorite movies I've seen so far this year. That's Eye in the Sky. Really, really great movie. Make sure to go check it out. Click this white eye up here, guys. You can see my review for Batman vs. Superman, my Week 12 update, and a bunch of other good stuff. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to come back and watch more movie reviews. Next week, I'll be covering The Boss. And yes, next month, I will be covering CinemaCon. CinemaCon will be back in town, and last year, my coverage was through the roof. So much stuff going on, and so many people loved it. I'll be covering CinemaCon again in April, so make sure to tune into that. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and let me know how you feel about the film down in the comment sections below. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jacob Toronto, and please continue chasing cinema.